management skills, project management, lean process development, wellness, strategic planning, and more. She's a true leader. And so I hope you join me in welcoming Diane so we can learn more about our brand. New year, new brand. New brand, what was it?
It was brand new year, finding and refining your personal leadership brand.
All right, take it away. And this is props to Diane because this is the first time really kind of doing a virtual presentation, and she has not been phased at all. So
I've had a lot of support. That's been the good part. So I appreciate that very much. So I'm really excited to be here today because leadership is the word that I feel really strongly about. It makes a huge difference in how things get done and who's going to do it and how it's going to impact the final result of whatever project or team you want to work with. So for the last 2 years, there have been a lot of changes, so many changes, mostly because of COVID. People's anxiety has increased. There's less physical contact because people can't get together. So now we're starting to wonder in 2022, who are you anyway? No one knows who anyone is anymore because so many things have changed. So let me show you a definition of the organizational brand. Our next slide, please. Let me just read this directly. A brand is a perception or emotion maintained by a buyer or a prospective buyer describing the experience relating to do business with an organization or consuming its products or services. Well, that sounds pretty hands-off, doesn't it? It sounds very vanilla. Well, that's because it is. It's defining a business or a product or service. Those are important definitions because it does sell products, but it's only one piece of the puzzle because your personal brand can impact this as well. I'd like to show an example of an organizational brand. See if you recognize this.
Okay, you might have to put up with 3 seconds of somebody else's commercial.
I don't know if we can hear it, Irene.
So what I want you to look while you're watching this commercial is there any emotion? What is the product? What do you see? What do you hear? Are there any other senses that you're experiencing as you watch this?
Okay, I'm going to start it again. Sorry.
My baloney has a first name, it's O-S-C-A-R. My baloney has a second name, it's M-A-Y-E-R. Oh, I love to eat it every day. And if you ask me why, I'll say, 'cause Oscar Mayer has a way with B-O-L-O-G-N-A.
Oscar Mayer, the first name in Bologna.
How's that?
So as you saw that commercial, did you feel anything? Were you happy? Were you engaged? Were you seeing that little boy and thinking, what a cutie? And didn't you just love that he liked bologna and that he talked about it and that his sandwich was really good? It gave you an experience about a company through an individual. It told you about the organization and what value was there for them. But now let's talk about personal brand. Your personal brand is a perception or emotion similar to an organization, but it's maintained by somebody other than you. So it's not what you think your brand is, it's what somebody else thinks. And it describes the total experience of having a relationship with you, and in particular you. I'd like you to now consider this. We're going to go into breakout rooms. You were all in a breakout room before, so go to the same one. I want you to think about your favorite boss, teacher, close friend, client, customer, colleague, pastor, leader. Doesn't matter who it is. I want you to think about one person, and that's who you're going to talk about during the breakout session. You're going to think privately first, what are the 3 characteristics that make these people your favorites? Because you'll each have a separate one. And then I want you to talk about 3 of the characteristics of your favorites, and that we will do a report out afterwards. So you'll have about 8 to 10 minutes. We'll give you a 2-minute warning. Make sense?
Can everybody see the breakout rooms?
I was not on earlier, so maybe it didn't send me in one.
Okay, I can put you in one. Is there a certain specific one?
Yeah,
you want?
probably me too.
Is there a specific one you want?
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Okay. All right, I'll send you, let's see. Oops. Okay.
Laura, will you let me know when everyone's back?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, there's Steph now. Hi, Steph. We announced you before as a new member. I don't know if you were on at that point, but just wanted you to know that.
Thank you.
Since November. Yay.
Okay, everybody should be back.
Okay. Hi,
Okay.
everybody. I hope your group was really dynamic and engaging for you. I would like just to have a little summary of what we talked about. So if there's anyone from a group that could just give 1 or 2 examples from their group, I'd appreciate it.
From our group, things that kind of stuck out to people was Nancy had a basketball coach, and she just said, there's no such word as can't. You can do this. You're very good at this. The same thing with Marianne. And then for Julie, she had somebody who, let her know that she could handle what she was going through, and then just like helped her find balance, and was just a really good role model for her.
Excellent. So it sounds like the coach and the role model took an individual under their wing and gave them some direction and encouragement, which helped that individual grow and develop. Awesome.
Well put.
Okay. Excellent. Is there another group that would like to report out something?
I can share what our group talked about. We had some characteristics that were common among a couple of us. Our leaders that we were thinking about were confident. They were also played a very strong mentoring role in teaching and encouraging. They also really had a positive attitude, and were courageous about speaking out and advocating for us as well.
Great. Sounds like it was a good conversation. I like the attitude portion. What we talked about was how that was a domino effect, that if one person was affected by it, they probably had a domino effect on someone else, but individuals would also see that leader talking to multiple people throughout the day and seeing the domino effect that way, creating an organization or a department or an interaction in a very positive way. Let's do one more and then we'll move on to the next slide.
I can share from our group. So I was really moved by the conversation in the short amount of time that we had, because I just saw that people were seeing the genuineness of each person that they shared. There was no black and white type of leader or mentor. It was unique to each person. And so just to see how that impacted each of us personally when we shared about a couple bosses. And there was a theme of those leaders really empowering you and trusting you. For example, and I'm trying to remember, forgive me, the name of the woman that shared regarding her boss, Cheryl. Thank you, Kristen.
Oh, wait, is that about the teacher?
Oh, yes, I can go there. So okay. Cheryl graciously shared about her English teacher. And then there were 3 other women that said their English teacher impacted them as well. But Cheryl had just this last week was moved by a picture of irises, and it brought her back to her high school time when this teacher was able to connect to the students in such a unique way. She called her quirky way, right? Is that the word you use, Cheryl?
Actually, I said kooky, but yeah, she was quirky and kooky.
And just how that was her brand because of how uniquely she connected. And then it was just really neat to see how that teacher responded in gratitude to Cheryl right away. And so I think we sometimes move so fast and thinking that it has to be this big name title or position that we have, when it's the little things in the connection to us personally that we really are moved by.
Excellent. Good conversations. Very, very good. So let's kind of summarize with our next slide. We talked a little bit about why we were drawn to the people we chose. A lot of it was the little things, as we described. It was also the respect that we were given. The relationship you had with them was really, it sounds like it was collaborative, supportive, encouraging, a variety of dynamic characteristics that make or break a relationship. Even though we only did 3 examples in each of our breakout sessions, it's kind of common between all the groups, and a lot of the characteristics that you found are synonymous with all leaders. And what does that tell you? It tells you that these are important characteristics for you to have. So let's continue on. I want to stress to you that the image of your brand is the perception held by someone else's mind. So as you talked as a group about each of those individuals, that was your positive perception of that individual. It was not them saying, this is my personal brand. It was not them giving you examples of why they're valuable to you. It was truly what you perceived. And through those repeated contacts together, that relationship evolved and it got sharper and sharper and sharper, because that individual saw you as a person and you saw them as a mentor in some way, shape, or form. A brand relationship with someone is the most loyal kind of relationship. You will go back to that person often, or they will come to you. Someone in our group said they have a relationship with someone to this day that is a 30-year-old relationship because of their connection. So the loyalty then sparks ideas and tactics to get mutual results. So a personal brand is going to get you very far in personal and professional relationships, because in the end, that confidence, that trust, that respect will lead to doing projects positively, building community positively, building family, building businesses, and all the things connected to it. So let's talk about your brand a little bit more. Everybody has a brand. You have a brand and I have a brand and you have a brand. But the question is your brand working for you? Is it a reflection of who you are in your head or someone else's head, and what you believe versus what you actually act? Your expression is visible to others, and it shows what you do and how you do it. So it's the behaviors related to it, the do. I can give you an example of, I walked into one of my clinics at one point, and a PT, a physical therapist, was walking their patient. And as I was walking by, I said, Sue, would you please come into my office when you're done? And didn't think anything about it. And she walked into my office. She said, did I do something wrong? And I immediately sunk in my heart, because she was doing a wonderful thing. She was working with this patient and giving such good directions and being very concise with everything that individual needed to do, providing support and encouragement as they were working towards the goals that were necessary for that person to walk. But I kind of destroyed her confidence at that point because there's always this fear of going into the boss's office. So I immediately apologized and I said, no, these are all the wonderful things you're doing. And I wanted to congratulate you on them and tell you, thank you so much. You have made a difference in this patient's life. And she said, oh, I'm so relieved. So what I did and how I did it was not probably the best method. And that left a personal leadership brand with that individual of, watch out for Diane, she might throw you a loop. But we reestablished that relationship. I apologized and we moved forward. So doing your part is what connects you to someone else. And that result is a relationship. There's not a right or wrong answer for a relationship in your brand. But it takes self-management, which we'll talk about next. Self-management is a way to develop more effective ways of handling situations, which then becomes your own personal brand. But you have to own it. If you don't own it, no one else will. So you have to create a strong personal brand that's clear, complete, and valuable to someone else. Not valuable to you, but to someone else. There needs to be collaboration and respect and consistency in what you're doing. So you have to be well thought out in the things that you're doing with. A strong personal relationship will be more successful and fulfilling for you because you'll get the results that you're looking for. And it will develop reliability, trustworthiness, and it will deepen your relationship with another person. Let's do some true and false kinds of things. Tell me yes or no out loud. Integrity and courage is vital in all relationships. True, raise your hand. Say it out loud, I can't hear you.
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. So exactly, if there's good integrity, there's trust. If there's courage to speak up about things, there will be communication because people will understand where there might be deficits in the relationship. Leadership means consistency. Did we say yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Whoop, we lost me. True or false? One more. Okay.
True. True.
The most important part of this slide is self-management principles develop more effectiveness. Brand. Let's go to the next slide. And that. So these are the top 10 characteristics of a leader. We've talked about some of these, but not all of them. So I'm going to go over the ones that we haven't talked about. Empathy. If we're empathetic to the individuals that we work with, they will see us as someone that they can rely on and be truthful and honest with. If we have learning agility for ourselves, we will be more agile with other people's learning agility. So for instance, I had a boss that was very strict about what he expected in operations. But if people made a mistake, he looked at it as a learning opportunity. And he didn't punish that individual or demean that individual in front of anybody. He used it as an opportunity to teach that person and anyone else that could benefit from it. The last area, actually there's two other areas. Integrity is huge. If people can't trust you because they don't know if you're lying or not, or if you're going to do things under the table, they will never accept your personal brand. And then lastly, and the most important, is self-awareness. That's why I put it at the bottom in its own area. These characteristics are so important to help create your own personal brand. Doesn't mean they have to be perfect. Doesn't mean they have to be right all the time, but it does mean that these are areas that you need to look at internally, decide if your behavior represents that. Self-awareness is the key thing to that point. So let's talk a little bit more about self-awareness. Emotions are connected to your brand, good, bad, or ugly. If your brand doesn't have an emotional connection with an individual, the likelihood of that relationship continuing will not be there. We can't be everything to everyone all the time. Absolutely not. But we can be effective if our behavior demonstrates that. If you consider positivity a good thing, you'll provide mental images and a positive attitude and communication at all times, and that will dominate your personal brand. Strong relationships provide lasting influence and power. Your brand can do this. The head and the heart are connected. Let's see how we get around naysayers and be more positive. So think about this. We talked about it a little bit earlier, that there was a leader that was very positive wherever they went, and they spread positivity throughout the day. Can do or can't do attitude can make or break an individual, can make or break an organization or a department. So I'm challenging you to think about winning attitudes and strategies. And I've given you a couple of examples. How many times have you heard, we've never done that before? Never, ever. Why do we want to do that? Well, think about it this way. Maybe they've never done it before because there were so many naysayers, the leader couldn't move it forward. But if that leader takes the time to listen to what that individual is saying, maybe they can find an opportunity to pull something out of that, be able to make this new process, this new development move forward. It's not good enough. Well, instead of it not being good enough, let's think of where we can improve what we're doing. No one communicates. Let's open the channels up. I had an example of an individual that came to one of our meetings and gave us new process improvement ideas that were outstanding. And because she was in the nursing department, no one thought that she would be able to contribute to this particular team, because she had no experience in moving apartments from one resident to another. And what we found out is that she was an apartment manager at one point and knew all the tricks of the trade and was able to provide us a forward. As we continue, I want to talk about your leadership brand and personal branding. Leaders see the possibilities and challenge the power of the status quo. And that oftentimes is dependent on a readiness factor. Are the people ready to move and change? Do you have to influence them? Do you have to make a difference in their fear level of what's going on, in the culture of inertia that never moves things forward? Well, I needed to do that at an organization. There were so many people in lead positions that they were tripping over each other. And everyone was going into everyone else's area. And I believe in having people work among each other in different departments and not have silos, but they literally were tripping on each other. So once we started talking about that as a team, people started trusting each other and people started setting up processes and systems whereby each area would take on a different step of a process, and we were able to get things done more quickly. There was no more stepping on toes. There was building of trust, and we capitalized on directors' abilities instead of complaining about each other. Leaders need to assess the assets that are available among everybody that they're working with. It doesn't matter if it's a family member, if it's a client, if it's a teacher, it doesn't matter. You need to look at what all the assets are of an individual and work on those being highlighted within whatever project you're working on. As we continue, more strategies need to use their identity to sharpen positive interactions with others and communicate their joint strategies. If people know where you're thinking and what you're thinking about, and then they share their thinking, you start building a stronger personal brand because there's mutual respect for each of the goals that you are looking on. Leaders should assume the positive in all situations. How often do you hear someone say something and assume the negative about that individual instead of thinking, well, maybe they really want to say something more positive. I'm not looking at it that way. I would have to do that with my children. I think we've all been in that experience where they're fighting together and one says something negative about the other. And instead of looking at the other side of what that person was thinking about, they started a fight. So if I could get them to talk about what the intention of an individual was, it really soothed the situation very quickly. Leaders are courageous and flexible, and they make changes as necessary. So here are some strategies. Be self-aware, look inward, provide positive energy, and let attitude rule. This is kind of a summary of what we've been talking about. Past actions and behaviors reflect back who we are. So it's what we do and how we act that affect in us. Remember, it's self-awareness through other people's eyes. Your identity shapes interactions and relationships with others. So your identity can influence people and can provide a stronger method to move in a direction you want it to go if that person trusts you and believes in you. And if you have a relationship collaboration. Adjust what you need to, develop goals and a plan, and you will be unstoppable. Don't shoot for perfection. It will never be there. Look at growth and effectiveness, and then create a plan to make that happen. So let's look at personal growth opportunities, goals, and approaches. This is your takeaway to use. If you look at where you want to grow and develop to be more effective, make a stronger personal brand, you need to look at the 10 characteristics that are the top characteristics and think about where you maybe aren't as strong. Or think about where you are strong and that you want to make it stronger. And then set up a goal with very specific steps and approaches so that you can move forward and get the outcome that you're looking for. So I gave you an example. There's an individual that is working with a company, and that company is always blaming them for not communicating and following up on tasks. So the goal was to improve communication for consistent follow-up and task completion. The way to do that is to look at yourself. I will identify with my colleagues areas of miscommunication and set a plan with them to improve our communication and develop a task completion list. Very, very specific. It includes 2 people or a team of people. It includes how the communication is going to occur, and it includes a task list to make sure that it's getting done. And the approach that I put down is I will write a list with follow-up steps, identifying the owner of each step, and highlight the deadline agreed upon by both parties to ensure there isn't miscommunication and delays in task completion. And then I will celebrate successes. So this is holding me accountable to make sure that miscommunication does not happen, that collaboration in the goal setting occurs, that there's accountability for getting the job done, and that we're celebrating the success and where we go from here. So I'm going to summarize what we've talked about today, because we've talked about a lot of things. First is, they won't remember what you said, but they will remember if you cared. Remember my example of the PT who was concerned that I was going to scold them? They knew that I cared in the end, and they were okay. And that's what they remembered me by. Because 10 years later, when I saw that same PT in a different clinic, in a different company, that person said, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "I do. How are you doing, Tony?" And she smiled and she said, "I've come a long way since we first met." So that was a very positive interaction with that person. Secondly, she listens to understand. She doesn't listen just to respond. Have you ever found that you're thinking ahead of what your answer is going to be when someone's talking to you? It's so easy to get stuck in your own mind that you don't really hear what the other person is saying. So listen to understand. Another important personal brand characteristic is, my job isn't to tell you how to think, but to think about what you tell me. So it's another communication piece that if you really think about what people tell you, they may come up with ideas that are so much better than what are, so much more compelling and so much more valuable. And at the same time, you've strengthened that relationship because you encourage that person, you celebrated that person, honoring their idea and putting it out there to be used. And again, it can be any scenario. That can be with a boss, that can be with a colleague, that can be with a client or a customer, that can be with someone at church. It doesn't matter. As we continue on, real integrity is doing the right thing, knowing that nobody's going to know whether you did it or not. So be true to yourself, be true to your heart, be true to the good rules that we have, our moral compass, and don't care if anyone's looking or not, because that will always keep you in the right direction you want to go. Courage is grace under pressure. You've heard that more than once. We, as a leader, have to be courageous to make differences in people's lives. And our personal brand needs to demonstrate that we have the courage to speak up about things. We need to do it respectfully. We need to do it with empathy. And we need to do it with collaboration with people. Ability is important in our quest for success, but dependability. How often have you been in a situation where you knew that it was critical that you needed to be there and that everyone was depending on you? That is really important, particularly for customer service. And lastly, mutual respect is the foundation of genuine harmony. You want to create harmony, if you want to develop more and more in that relationship and build that personal bond, you need to be thinking about those kinds of areas. So our next slide is just talking about Betty White. So she didn't make her 100th birthday, but she made 99 years of impact on all of us. So these are just rhetorical questions. We're not going to answer them, but it responds back to what we've been talking about today. What did she consistently do? It was her behavior. How did she interact with people? It's what she did. What did her body language say? It was her communication. What was her biggest asset? What do people remember about you? How did others see her? She's called America's sweetheart for a reason. And she's honored so much today because of those characteristics. I challenge you to think about those things as you become more self-aware of what your strengths and areas of opportunity are to create a personal brand for yourself. And on our last slide, thank you for being a friend. These 4 women were friends for a long time on Golden Girls. Each were very different personalities. Each were very much their own person. Each of them was not right or wrong. Each of them was effective in their own way. But there's always opportunity for growth and development. There are things that you see about them that you maybe laugh at, you maybe get upset about, but you know that through self-awareness, those kinds of things can change and create a more effective personal leadership brand. These ladies had their own brand and they worked well together and they figured out ways to interact in a positive way to get done what they need done. So thank you for being a friend. Any questions? That's a lot of stuff.
I don't have a question, but I just want to share, there was a tweet about Betty White that I think summarizes what personal brand is. And it was, imagine living 99 years and an entire country collectively agreeing it wasn't long enough. I just think that's so brilliant. Like, that's
That
personal
says a
brand.
lot.
Yeah. So I
That
love
says
that
a lot.
analogy.
Especially the country thing. It wasn't just 1 or 2 people. It was the whole country. That says a lot.
And maybe beyond the country even.
That's probably true. Probably
And
true.
different age groups too. I mean, everybody, she touched tons of different generations.
Correct.
I think it was because she was funny. Humor
Yeah.
goes a long way no matter what age, and she was always funny.
Yep.
Yeah.
And she was respectful of people. Didn't matter who you were. She was respectful in every way possible. She went beyond herself.
I don't know if you saw, but on Monday for her birthday, if you went to Google and searched her, rose petals went across her entire screen and said happy birthday. In a tribute to her from Google.
Yep.
Well, and I think, and her birthday was on the same day as Martin Luther King celebration.
Yeah.
But I think I saw in the news, you guys can help me out here, but I want to say a local shelter raised $17,000 just for her animal advocate, like $5 donations on her behalf. So she's the perfect example of personal brand. You're right,
Yeah.
Nancy. Funny, like humor is kind of the universal language, but she was kind. She aged beautifully. You know, there was just so many things.
So if there are no other questions, we'll go on to the next part of the presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Irene or Kristen, anything? Otherwise, I'll go ahead.
I think we moved to the announcements, Mary Ann.
Okay. All right. Well, yes, thank you. First of all, thank you, Diane. This was great. And thank you for taking the time to put it together to bring this, not information, but bring yourself to us. And it certainly was heartwarming to hear. It takes a bit.